One of the most fundamental questions in ethics is this: why do some human beings disregard ethics? It isn't so much that they argue against ethics, it isn't that they disagree. No, it is simply that they ignore ethics and are willing to live in a manner that is so severed from relationship and reality, so low fidelity, that they do feel comfortable causing harm and destroying even that which they might love. In using the meta model, I have actually gotten some answers to this question that are novel and very interesting and not what you would typically expect. Very often I have heard among other philosophers the idea that the resistance to ethical thinking stems mostly from education. That's never satisfied me much because I find that often very highly educated individuals are not any more ethical than people that are not educated, and that education in general never stops anybody from engaging in behavior that is destructive. So the answer that I received from the meta model is quite interesting. Not education, not even attention was elevated as the source of unethical behavior, but actually a cascade of logical conclusions called the descent of nodes, which I will present to you here and give you some explanation, that for me provides tremendous insight into this issue and also provides and suggests individual strategies for anyone who would like to live in a much more high fidelity manner. So the descent of node works like this. The first step for any consciousness is to define itself in contrast to the systemic whole. The manner in which it defines itself in contrast to the systemic whole defines its fundamental relationship with truth and the level of fidelity that that self-identification can manage. From there, the following node is the attention that is given to truth and to truth seeking, and the fidelity that is interesting to the identity from there. From that is derived intent. From that is derived motivation. Identity, fidelity, attention, intent, and then motivation. Now, I find this tremendously insightful and tremendously useful because it becomes clear quite quickly that for biologic organisms like human beings, much of our self-definition comes from how we were raised, our culture, ideology, and choices and experiences that we've made previously in life. However, if we are conscious, we can, in fact, recursively modify our identity. We do that subconsciously anyway, but we can do it consciously in a manner that might encourage fidelity with reality that is higher than what we currently experience. It's also obvious that there are certainly identities out there, many of them quite commonplace, that cannot and never will have a high fidelity relationship with reality because reality is a source of friction to the identity, not a source of harmony. So it may well be that for consciousness to arise, a certain kind of severing with reality is necessary simply because consciousness has to live in contrast to a systemic whole as a single instance of, rather than part of a weave or a fundamental substrate. But that does not mean that the identity arises needs to be hostile to. It can be complementary to. It can be a mode or a mechanism by which further exploration of the fundamental substrate is enjoyed rather than resisted. And recognizing that for ourselves, that strategy naturally emerges, that for those of us that wish to live high fidelity lives that are relational with reality and not hostile to truth, carefully and intentionally structuring our identities in such a manner that they live within those constraints comfortably and without opposition. Well, it's certainly a strategy that bears a great deal of contemplation and reflection. And I would hope that all of us would reflect on how we might do that.